Hi everyone, I'm Tally, this is Farrell and we are bored of it, and welcome to our review of Tanares Adventures. As you may have guessed from the big box and the artwork, Tanares is a cooperative campaign adventure ready to consume your life, promising over 100 hours of unique gameplay, which we very much believe. Please note that Tanares is an expansion for the miniatures skirmish game Arena the Contest. Arena was primarily player versus player, but also included a short, well-received co-op campaign, which was then followed up in Gloomhaven, Oathsworns style, with this epic expansion, and also includes some new content for the player versus player aspects.
In Tanares Adventures, you're going to go on a branching narrative, kind of full of very different experiences, adventure, and 1 to 4 players are going to control 4 heroes. And the story is that your homeland has been invaded by an unknown and unexpected kind of enemy force. They've decimated the capital, leadership's in disarray, you've had to flee, and now you have to kind of guerrilla style do little adventures and quests and missions, grow the resistance and take your homeland back. Now please note that we will send both of these by the publisher designers to review, and also that obviously this being a gigantic campaign, we have not played all of it, but we have played a fair few games and enough to have seen every kind of phase that the game throws at you, and most of them multiple times.
The first thing you'll do is pick your heroes for the upcoming quest. At the beginning of the campaign, there's a tutorial and introduction to Tanares, which will help you pick your first 4 heroes. There are 8 different classes of heroes available, and there'll always be 4 heroes in play. Although if you have less than 4 players, there are comrade heroes, which are a more simplified version to control. As you progress, you'll be able to add more heroes to your roster. Once your hero and their associated cards and attacks are in front of you, you can begin the journey phase, which is a choose-your-own-adventure style prelude to the current quest. Players will decide which options to take together, and this may include some D&D style checks based on your hero's stats. Interestingly, the decisions that are made here will impact the setup and the running of the combat phase, and may impact what quest you end up with.
Once you've been directed to set up and begin a quest, combat will occur. Most quests have unique mechanisms and unique objectives, but generally what you're going to be doing is moving room to room, defeating groups of villains. Combat is card driven, with your character having a number of cards which work differently, different abilities on them, and you'll play one to do an attack with that card, and then you'll flip it over when done. You'll also have to roll a d20, and you'll hit if you exceed or match the villain's defense value. Once you've played all of your cards, then you get your hand back and you can kind of go again with more choice. Now, players can take turns in any order, but when a player on their turn attacks villain or villains, the first villain they attack will retaliate as soon as that player finishes their turn. That villain will come at you and then they'll become fatigued. And if all players have gone and there's still villains that aren't fatigued, then at the end of the round, those villains will take their turn in whichever order you want. However, they're going to get a nasty damage bonus since they're not tired. Then there are also a lot of other little elements to combat, things that you'll probably know if you've played these types of games before. Line of sight, healing powers, dangerous terrain, fire, range, all these kind of things to consider, reactions if you move past someone. So there's a lot of crunchy stuff going on here.
After you either complete or fail the quest, we'll move to the city phase. Here, you'll build a deck of heroes and NPCs, which will get assigned to different activities in the city of Warfugee, which is your base. These activities include things like gathering loot, new heroes, new NPCs, upgrading buildings, which will allow you to improve your characters, buying new gear, etc. However, at certain points, instead of a city phase, there'll be a world phase, in which the same deck is used in the same manner, but to affect the world map, which will unlock ongoing campaign perks and story.
The first thing to know about Tanares Adventures is that this is a lifestyle game. It's big, it's expansive, the boxes are enormous, it takes half a day to have a full session, and the setup and teardown are a complete chore. But crucially, if your group is the type of group that loves these kind of games and this genre, then you would be very much interested in Tanares. Yes, it's experimental and rough around the edges, but this allows it to be varied and interesting in ways I haven't seen in other games of this genre. And crucially, what we have in front of us is the original edition of Tanares Adventures, and the publisher has just run a Kickstarter for Tanares Ultimate, or Tanares 2.0 if you will, that's going to fix all the errata that's come up, make some serious quality of life improvements, and cut out a lot of the faff that comes with this version, so it should be easier to get to the table in future. What stands out most is what appears to be the genuine passion that the designers and publishers have to be interesting and innovative. We've been genuinely surprised by how much we enjoyed our time with Tanares, particularly because this isn't our usual genre at all. And I think for both of us, our favourite part by far was the journey phase, where you do the choose your own adventure bit. We've found the options within the story enticing and interesting, and we particularly liked how when you get to the quest phase, the ramifications of your actions appear to help or hinder you. It's a really nice, sharp design point. We also really enjoyed the fact that when you're going through this choose your own adventure, your decisions will end up deciding which quest you get. So even two sets of groups starting the same mission card can end up doing completely different quests when you get to that phase.
Honestly, if there was a game made just from this phase, we'd probably buy it. What's a really nice touch is that at least so far, an attempt has been made to make each journey phase feel unique. So far, we've been playing dexterity games, solving logic puzzles, doing a bit of gambling, all within the context of the story, which is really nice and feels really immersive. Just to touch upon the story a bit, it's fine, pretty straight-laced, maybe a bit generic, but there's an admirable amount of world building that's gone into this, which helps you feel really immersed in the story, and we're certainly engaged, and it's always really clear what the stakes are from the story. One of the most interesting parts of the narrative is the fact that it's branching. Before you start up a session, you'll be given a few mission cards to choose from, which will explain what you'd be trying to do, but also the risks of not choosing them. You can't do everything, and not choosing certain things will impact the story just as much as choosing them. For example, not dealing with a threat might allow it to grow in strength, or not obtaining knowledge about the enemy might turn the tide of a battle in the future. At the end of a session, you might be asked to remove mission cards from the game and mark that in the campaign log as such, which could impact future situations. This is really great for creating stakes, getting players invested in the story, and for creating tough decisions.
Turning to combat, welcome to AP Hell. Now on the surface, it sounds simple, right? You play a card, you roll a die, did you do damage? Done. However, combat is so tactical that you'll very quickly find yourself staring at the board for way too long than socially acceptable, trying to figure out the perfect move. And because combat is so chess-like, in terms of the fact you can know what's going to happen based on your actions, how the enemies are going to react, where they're going to go, who they're going to go after, you tend to start thinking of moves and counter moves, and then there's a lot of opportunities for teamwork and collaboration. This is all bolstered by the fact that you always have tough choices to make because of this system where a villain will attack you instantly if they're unfatigued. So then you have to decide between kind of all walloping on one villain in the hope that you get rid of them, knowing they won't attack you back after the first time, but then you risk having villains who you haven't incited a reaction from doing extra damage at the end of the round. So there's a lot to consider, and it's just incredibly crunchy.
We could see the combat being a bit divisive between players. Some people might really love the predictive tactical nature of being able to min-max everything, whilst others might find it frustrating and fiddly trying to figure out line of sight and trying to remember the rules for when reactions are incited. The biggest issue that we had is that this is ripe for quarterbacking, particularly when one player knows the rules intimately. Also, the quality of the quest design really depends, at least for us, how much fun we had, because usually there's some kind of unique novel objective. But the least fun that we had was in the quest where it was just room after room of fighting villains with little else to really consider.
This leads into our biggest overall problem with Tanares, the length. You've got to unpack 2 giant multi-layered boxes to get the components out. Then you've got to decide what heroes you want to be and gather all their components. Then you've got to read the journey phase. You've got to do all the reading out loud, choose your own adventure. You've got to make decisions. You've got to play mini games. And then at the end of this, you have to then set up the quest in the middle of the session. Then the quest always runs over long and is AP inducing. They'll always use 5 enemies when 4 would have done. They'll always use 3 rooms when 2 would have got the point across. Then you do the city phase, and then you have to pack it all away again. I genuinely don't know how people would play this 4-player unless they all live together or they had a permanent table for it to be out on and a lot of free time. I mean, we played this 2-player and we were using 2 comrade heroes which run really quickly.
Just to be clear, we have a real drive to carry on playing Tanares and we really want to continue with our campaign post this review. But just know that it is really hard to get to the table. A key part of this drive is the city phase, where you'll get to spend your loot, and this is where a lot of the progression systems also come into play. It prevents you with a lot of tough decisions about spending your loot because everything is equally as interesting. So you could spend cards in order to upgrade buildings, which then allows you to improve your characters, which is pretty cool. And you can also gather up entirely new heroes and then play as them in the next quest, which is a great way to keep things fresh and keep the combat interesting. Then, of course, because you have all of this new stuff, you feel compelled to go in for a new cycle of play, and then Tanares owns you.
As we touched upon earlier, there are a few rough edges, which we're just going to run through now before we wrap up, just in case any of them would be deal breakers for you. And the first is that Tanares Adventures has real poor delineation of what comes in Tanares Adventures and what is elsewhere. Because when the publishers did the campaign for Tanares Adventures, they went full-on Kickstarter with all kinds of expansions and miniature expansions and this and that. And Tanares constantly references things that you don't have. For example, the first time we did the city phase, we drew our first new hero. Next session we played, Tally wanted to play as her. And I spent about 20 minutes looking through every card in both boxes, trying to find her attack cards. Turns out they're in Expansion X. Even though her hero card comes with Tanares Adventures, so you can't play as her in the quest phase. Similarly, there is an issue with the miniatures in that a lot of them seems random really if they come in Tanares or in some miniature expansion. And there's a lot of faffery about if you have to look in the box you have or you have to use a generic one. And it's just a lot of hassle to something that already takes a long time to get on the table.
Secondly, when it comes to the components, they are really generic for the quest setup. You have a fairly boring looking grid for the board, and then you add to this even more boring looking walls and tiles. We do completely appreciate that a lot has been done with a little here, which saves players having to sort through even more hundreds of components to find something for the new quest setup, but this is at the expense of immersion. The board is often so bland and uninteresting that, at least for me, I kind of lose flavour of what quest that we're on. It's very easy to forget because there's just no immersion there, and we think that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, and when we say components, we're mainly talking about the tiles. I mean, the miniatures are quite good, some of the best probably, but it's just, I mean, you can see, right, what it looks like.
Yeah.
Finally, the Comrade Heroes, well, a great addition to gameplay, a lifesaver if you're playing with less than 4, very sharp design, very easy to run. They're strangely anti-player to upgrade, because the way you get better attacks is by upgrading the buildings in the city phase for standard heroes. And this is also true of the Comrades, except on top of that, you also have to then pay to upgrade the Comrades class to the next level. So now you're kind of paying twice for a hero that's arguably less useful due to the fact that they're not as robust and they have less attacks. But you're also kind of stuck within that class of Comrade because it's assigned to the class. So if you want to change a shooter into a healer for whatever reason, you have to drop back down to, the base level and then pay for all those upgrades again. It's just very strange and very unfriendly to the players, I think.
So, final thoughts. Tanares Adventures was a real delight to play and quite the surprise to us. There are elements in each phase which really stand out and keep us returning. The world building is really excellent, the combat is tactical and crunchy, and the choose your own adventure elements are really engaging and pretty innovative. If you like these big epic dungeon crawler style games with miniatures or branching narrative storylines, we can't see you not having a blast with Tanares. This isn't our typical type of game that we enjoy, but we certainly did have a blast.
Now, there are some rough edges which we've gone over throughout the review, but this isn't something that should necessarily stop you from getting it. However, what you do have to consider is that although Tanares Adventures is the size of kind of, an Oathsworn or a Gloomhaven, it's an expansion, which means you also need to get Arena the Contest, and getting both those boxes together isn't a cheap prospect. Also, it's probably best if you wait, considering that Tanares Ultimate will be coming out in the future, or at least late pledge to it, because this is going to be an updated edition of Tanares, which is going to probably cut away a lot of the faff and some of the issues that we had. So the kind of final thought is, if you are interested, if your group is interested in this kind of game, then I don't think you'll go wrong with Tanares Adventures, but you have to make sure it is right for you. So that was our review. Thank you for watching. We hope it was helpful. Please consider subscribing if it was, because that means a lot to us and it helps grow. Please ask us any questions you have, and most importantly, thanks a lot. See ya.
Bye.